Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mr. TARDIS, and the new run of Big Finish River Song box sets is now well underway. This is the Death and Life of River Song, which is the spiritual sequel series to the Diary of River Song series from Big Finish. And this started off last year with Last Words, which is meant to take place after the Forest of the Dead ending for Alex Kingston as River Song. However, the follow-up box set, Ace and Tegan, took place before River Song went to the library, and now The Dissolution of Time, which is the third box set in this range. This takes place in River Song's chronology after the events of Series 5's The Big Bang, but before she gets pardoned before the events of The Angels Take Manhattan, so I'm guessing the whole idea that this is meant to be a post-library River Song has just gone out the window. I would say that this box set is also meant to be about telling one long big story, because The Dissolution of Time is one 4-hour epic written by Roshana Patel. Last Words was a 4-hour epic as well. But two things, Ace and Tegan, while it does follow these three characters, is basically three distinct stories told across 4 episodes, and the Diary of River Song story Friend of the Family was also a big 4-hour epic, so I don't know what's happening with the rebranding of this range. Anyway, that's all the superficial stuff, because we're here to talk about The Dissolution of Time, written by Roshana Patel. This is a big epic 4-hour story starring River Song. The big inciting incident is that River Song is in Stormcage prison. She's just finished a date with the Doctor, and then Stormcage and basically the rest of the universe gets destroyed. However, River Song is saved from this apocalypse by a character called Dust. He is a pantheron, so a 7-foot-tall panther cat creature. He is a Knight of the Shadow, and he's played by Joseph Cap. Dust is able to scoop River Song out of this apocalypse in a protective bubble, and because the Stormcage prison is run by Anglican clerks, they're taken to the early 16th century because, and I quote, it's causally safe. The idea that time is a person and is able to manipulate events and move people in the right direction to get back on course is a recurring theme in The Dissolution of Time, because basically time has apparently dropped River Song and Dust into the Tudor England period of history in order to stop this apocalypse from happening and try and restore time to its correct course. Dust is equipped with a perception filter, so he's able to assume a human identity as they land on the Mary Rose, which is Henry VIII's ship. River Song and Dust have conveniently landed on the same day that it's announced that Catherine of Aragon has passed away, so there's a big dispute over the throne, over the next queen, and thankfully for people like me who don't know much about Tudor England other than the nursery rhyme about how King Henry VIII's wives were killed, River Song loves this period of history to the extent that she apparently wrote a dissertation on it and is on hand to exposit all of the information that we need to know. It's up to River Song and Dust to try and survive Tudor England and try and outwit Anne Boleyn, of all people, who is trying to save herself from her fate in history because she has been shown the events of history from a alien weed that is growing in the King's Garden.
This is, best guess, early 16th century?
How can you possibly know that?
Just look at that skyline. The Tower of London is there, but there's no St. Paul's Cathedral, not even the first one. And the deck of this ship is just bristling with bronze cannons.
And is all that supposed to mean anything to me?
Not half as much as this rose, carved into the wood of the ship, painted red and white to symbolise the joining of two houses, Lancaster and York, into one. The House of Tudor. And I think this ship is the Mary Rose, the actual Mary Rose.
Right.
So, this is very obviously Tudor England during the reign of King Henry VIII.
I see. So is that pre-Dalek invasion?
Pre-Dalek in... Yes, and then some.
We have 4 parts to this adventure. We have the Armageddon game, Anne Boleyn Must Die, A Good Woman Goes to War, and the Schism Bloom. The Schism Bloom is the name of the alien weed that's in the garden that is causing these massive time paradoxes. And I've got to say, The Dissolution of Time, while it is a long story, it's 4-hour-long episodes, I thought it was a wonderful listen. I had a brilliant time with this, and I think it's because Roshana Patel, very much like she did with Missy's Dark Gallifrey chapters earlier in the year, just knows how to line up with these established Doctor Who characters with historical parallels and metatextual parallels that brings out more challenges for the characters. For example, with Missy, she met the Seventh Doctor's incarnation during that story in the Dark Gallifrey arc, and she's meeting the scheming manipulator Doctor, and that sort of validates her worldview. Whereas in the Dissolution of Time, we have River Song, who is this woman who has been punished by the universe for a crime that she did not commit, and puts her face to face with Anne Boleyn, who has had something of a reclamation in history and culture in recent years. Anne Boleyn here played by Charintha Chandran from Bridgerton. She played Edwina in the second season. So River Song having to combat basically a historical parallel to herself in this story was really fascinating, and I think Charintha Chandran really brought out the drama of the character. She's really having a great time playing this role and really diving into the material. Like, she's got this real youth and energy and enthusiasm to her, but she's also really strong and powerful as a figure. But I think that one aspect that the Dissolution of Time gets really, really right, it's the side character, it's the pseudo-companion, it's Dust, and this kind of reminds me of the last, 10 out of 10 River Song story, Friend of the Family by Tim Foley, which paired her up with a holographic assistant, Hugo, played by Mark Elstob. That was a brilliant dynamic, and River and Dust in the Dissolution of Time have a wonderful back and forth with each other. There's the really useful utility of having a futuristic alien creature who needs to be clued in on Tudor England, and River Song is able to do that. Dust doesn't know much about Earth history. He doesn't think that Earth gets interesting until the Daleks invade in the 22nd century, and there's a really great utility to that, so the audience can be clued in by River to get all of the context that they need. But then there's just the really strong foundational elements of a character to contrast against River. Dust is a pessimist, River is an optimist, at least in terms of this context. Dust is someone who's driven by duty, whereas River is more driven by morality and instinct and intuition. It's just a really, really great pairing, and I have no idea how Joseph Camp does his voice acting to make him somehow sound like a human cat. I can picture it perfectly in my mind's eye when he's speaking in his Pantheron form, but how do you do that with your mouth? That's so impressive. And there's also just some really great attention to detail. River Song is the wife of the Doctor and knows about Elizabeth I, and in this time period she encounters Elizabeth I, who is 2 years old, and absolutely hates her, and her passive aggression towards the future queen is so funny. And there's a really great sense of escalating stakes as paradoxes are thrown on top of paradoxes, as River and Dust completely find themselves incapable of righting time onto its correct course, and the schism bloom starts to get stronger and grow larger and start poisoning people and infecting England. It just completely goes way out of their control, and it just makes you wonder, how on earth are they going to stop this thing? And it's great for this story for it to be a River Song story as opposed to a broader Doctor Who story, because the Doctor could just jump in the TARDIS and, he's full-blown Time Lord, he'd be able to figure a way out of this, whereas River, she knows enough about time travel, and she is part Time Lord as well to, intuit a lot of this stuff, but because she is not the main character of the Doctor Who universe, she still has an uphill battle to climb.
Why, in your view, must I die?
Because where I'm from, in the 51st century, this is a fixed point in history, vital to the development of nations and religious institutions that define our entire existence, shaping countless lives across 3,000 years.
So such people would have new lives? New futures?
No, we don't know that. We don't know what that new future will be.
But perhaps it will be better for everyone. It seems to me that this is an arbitrary rule that you follow.
You're biased.
As are you. Everything has always been a certain way and must remain so, because it suits you. But such notions are always folly. Change can be good.
Not on this scale.
Tell me what you have lost as a result of this change.
Everything.
As I would if I died. I understand why you are here now, why you wish to stop me, but you will not succeed. In fact, it seems as if I now have 2 or even 3 sources of foreknowledge at my disposal, and so far you are all proving most informative.
Damn, you're good at this.
If there's an issue with the dissolution of time, it kind of feels like the story does end up writing itself into a corner when it comes to part 4 by making the stakes so high and there being so many insurmountable changes to the timeline. So in the end, it does kind of require a big red button reset at the end, which takes the wind out of the sails of the plot somewhat. Thankfully, the resolution that the story goes for does not betray the characters. On the contrary, it makes for a fascinating moment in River's history, which we do see get played out in the TV series. And I think Roshana Patel's characterization, just really strong fundamental work here, and really lovely flowery dialogue, for lack of a better term, pardon the pun. And Alex Kingston, who once again, as usual, really does show up to play here. I think she never ever phones in a performance as this character. She's really terrific. The Dissolution of Time, for my money, is probably the best River Song box set since Friend of the Family. It's another brilliant epic 4-part family drama around the family and the court of Henry VIII that I really enjoyed listening to. If you're a fan of Tudor history, I unambiguously recommend The Dissolution of Time, but also if you're a fan of like alternative history, you know, what could have been if a different path had been taken in history and like parallel timelines and stuff, you know, Dissolution of Time is also a really fascinating piece of historical revisionism. It's just really metatextually fascinating, the reclamation of Anne Boleyn and the contrast of her to River Song, or should I say a great companion piece of a character. Maybe if you're someone who wholeheartedly prefers the futuristic spacefaring aspect of the Doctor Who universe, maybe a box set like Last Words is a lot easier to recommend, but still, Dissolution of Time, I really liked this one a lot. It's got a really nice and heartwarming epilogue. I think the interplay between River Song and Dust is top-notch. Roshana Patel has had one hell of a year so far. The Legend of the Baba Yaga story, from The Fugitive Doctor Most Wanted to Dark Gallifrey Missy, that whole trilogy of stories, like, Roshana Patel has had one hell of a year so far. You know, I'm struggling to think of a Big Finish writer in 2025 who has consistently impressed me as much as Roshana Patel, and this is just another blooming rose in the garden of her writing work. Metaphors are hard. But I really want to know now if her final story of the year, an 8th Doctor story, Lost Among the Stars in the Causeway box set, if that's also like a peak 10 out of 10 story, because so far in 2025 she's 3 for 3, and I really would hate for her to stumble at the last hurdle, but damn, Roshana Patel has had one hell of a year. She's done really terrific work. But anyway, that's the death and life of River Song, The Dissolution of Time. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Subscribe for more Big Finish and Doctor Who reviews. Hit the like button, it really helps me out. And folks, I'll see you all next time.